All right, shalom, shalom, shalom. You are live and direct once again with your Akazaki Yahoo, and I'm giving all praises, honor, and great esteem unto the Most High Power, Yahuwah, Bahashem, Yahushua, Hamashiach, and to the 12 tribes of Israel who are scattered to the four corners of the earth. I say shalom, wa, baruchim, that is peace and blessings. And I cannot wait to the day when the Most High brings us back together, and we are once again 12 tribes, one family, one nation, under the Most High Power, under one covenant, back in our own land with a heart of flesh and no more a heart of stone, with our enemies, our adversaries, and all those who hate us under our feet. Hallelujah.
Hallelujah.
Yes, indeed. I'm joined this afternoon by my most esteemed Kenaniah. Shabbat Shalom, Aki.
Hey, Shabbat Shalom, Aki. Shabbat Shalom, Yasharal. Call Halal Yahweh. Bahashem, Hamashiach, Wa Malak Yahweh Shah, Barakatham.
Hallelujah. Yes, indeed. All praises to the Most High, Yahweh, in the name of his beloved Son, Yahweh Shah, the Messiah and King. Bless you. Hallelujah. So we are back again on another Shabbat evening or afternoon, and praises to the Abba for another day of rest. Praise the Abba for the Sabbath every week, because it is the opportunity for us to rest, recharge, and refocus on him. Hallelujah. As if we had lost
Hallelujah.
focus. Yes, indeed. All praises to the Abba. As if we had lost focus, but just maintaining that focus, that such needed focus on our Abba, on our power, and what it is that he's going to do for us by delivering us out of the hands of our adversaries. So praises to the Abba. We're going to go ahead and get to the video review. We got three good videos, all three coming to us from the good brothers over at Black Journals. Shout out to Black Journals over there, and the great work that they do. This first video is entitled "What Happened in Columbia, and that's Tennessee, in 1946, will leave you speechless." So what happened in Columbia, Tennessee in 1946 will leave you speechless. Now, for those of you who wonder, why is it that these brothers cover these stories, these historical stories, with all of this gloom in it? Well, the scriptures teach us in Deuteronomy chapter number 32 and verse 7, remember the days of old, consider the years of many generations. Ask your father, and he will show you, your elders, and they will tell you. So it's important for us to remember those old times, those days in history, to understand who we are, where we came from, and what our people have gone through. So it's not been rainbows and kitten
Sunshine and
yeah,
just kumbaya.
exactly. It's been some hard stuff going on, and we have to be mindful of these things, because those who don't understand or don't deal with their history are doomed to repeat it. So, uh, with that being said, let's get to the video. Again, this is what happened in Columbia, and that's Columbia, Tennessee, in 1946. This will leave you speechless. Now, I'll tell you that I was unfamiliar with this story. I am unfamiliar. I've watched about a minute into this, and I thought this would be something to bring out. So here we go.
In the heart of Columbia, Tennessee, East 8th Street, a place called The Bottom, once thrived as a vibrant black business district, a beacon of entrepreneurial spirit and community pride. This historic hub, nestled in the shadows of downtown, was the epicenter of the pivotal 1946 Columbia race riot, a watershed moment in post-World War II America. Columbia, Tennessee, a city once woven with Southern charm and long-term hard work of aspiring black men and women, was brought down to ashes and rubble by only 2 fateful nights of unrelenting terror. Homes, once warm and welcoming, all lay in smoldering ruins, their charred remains a haunting testament to the destruction. Main Street, once the pulsing heart of the community, was transformed into a desolate expanse of shattered glass and splintered wood, a graveyard of broken dreams. The human toll was staggering. Lives lost, futures extinguished, and scores more forever scarred by the horrors they witnessed. Some fell to sniper fire, their promising lives cut short in the prime of youth, like autumn leaves ripped from their branches. Others succumbed to flames that engulfed their homes, their screams echoing through the night, a chilling serenade of suffering. The lucky ones had fled, but the memories of that night would haunt them forever. The sounds of shattering glass, crunching wood, and anguished cries still echoing through their minds like a perpetual nightmare. The acrid smell of smoke and sweat hung heavy, a constant reminder of the terror that gripped the city. Colombia's soul was battered, its people shattered, like fragile porcelain dropped on concrete. But amidst this devastation, a haunting question would linger. What in the world would have sparked such an inferno of hate in the first place? Before we continue with this important part of American history, kindly support our channel by hitting the thumb button. Share with your friends and families to help spread our eye-opening Black narrative, and consider subscribing to our channel if you're yet to. Your support means a whole lot to us. Now, let us get into the digest proper. February 25th, 1946, was the day the spark ignited. James Stevenson, a battle-hardened World War II Navy boxer, and his 37-year-old mother, Gladys Stevenson, visited Kastner Knott, a local department store, to collect their radio that they had dropped there for repairs. On getting there, they discovered it had been sold to another customer. When Mrs. Stevenson didn't go and insisted on getting her radio, William Fleming Jr., the store employee and clerk, confronted her using racial slurs at the same time, trying to abuse her physically. However, James stepped in to defuse the tense confrontation between the two. Unfortunately, Fleming's aggression shifted from the mother to the son, thereby provoking a physical confrontation. As tensions boiled over, the altercation escalated. The brutal fight reached its climax as James brutally beat Fleming Jr., sending him crashing through a glass window. There, razor-sharp glass fragments tore into his flesh, leaving him severely injured. Seeing this, other white men who were in the vicinity jumped into the fight. It was at that instant that Gladys Stevenson, James's mother, got struck in her eye. As the fight intensified, the white neighbors would call the authorities, who promptly arrived at the scene. On arriving, they would take Fleming to the hospital while the police chief, Walter Griffin, and Officer W.C. Frazier arrested the Stevensons with a charge of disturbing the peace of the neighborhood. The initial Daily Herald report of the incident would quote Chief Griffin as saying that the Stevensons admitted pushing Fleming through the window. Griffin would also say they had also cut Fleming with fragments of glass. Before World War II, such an incident may not have occurred, as James Stevenson might not have felt empowered to defend himself. But as blacks across the nation served alongside whites in the military, they discovered a world much different than their segregated hometowns. And having risked their lives the same as white soldiers, they felt they deserved similar respect. The news of the incident had spread rapidly. Fleming's injuries would be escalated by the rumor mill. The Stevensons were already in police custody, and the black community feared the worst: social lynching. They were not going to permit another social lynching. The term social lynching comes from a statement that a black businessman and community leader, Julius Blair, made at the time of the Stevenson incident. Blair recalled that after the earlier lynchings, the parties responsible for the lynchings actually would have parties in which they cut up the rope that was used. The horrible lynchings were turned into a social event, hence the term social lynchings. Initially, the Stevensons would be taken before a magistrate. They would both admit to fighting. Gladys Stevenson had said that she had fought back, and each was fined $50 plus court costs. They didn't have the money to pay immediately, so they were held in the county jail till they could pay up. After they had paid each the sum of $50, they would be released. However, the incident was still far from over, as it had already unleashed a maelstrom of hatred that would haunt the community. Unsatisfied with James's punishment, Fleming Jr.'s father, William Fleming, would take matters into his own hands. Later that same day, he would secure a warrant for James Stevenson's arrest, charging him this time with a more severe offense: assault with intent to commit murder. Julius Blair, a prominent African-American businessman and community leader, would at this point try to propose a peaceful resolution between both parties, bypassing law enforcement involvement. But William Fleming would, however, reject the option, fueled by a desire to assert racial dominance and maintain the existing power dynamic. The entire situation had begun to raise tensions in the minds of black individuals too, as crowds of white people started gathering in the town square to discuss the incidents. The African American community would hear rumors on the next line of action by the white community that they were planning to lynch Stevenson. Adverse to a lynching, the black community, comprising many veterans, would begin readying themselves for self-defense upon hearing the news about the planned lynching of their colleague. On the other hand, the white citizens would order that the businesses in the Mink Slide, the African American business district, turn off their lights. And then they wouldn't wait for the order to be carried out. They would begin to shoot out the street lights, also cutting off telephone lines. At night, a white mob would gather around the Maury County Courthouse, their anger and hatred simmering like a pot of water about to boil over. Meanwhile, black citizens and military veterans had converged on the Mink Slide, the segregated black business district. Their anxiety could be read on their faces. They knew what had always happened to black economic properties whenever there was trouble. They were going to protect this one with their lives. The sheriff would request assistance from Governor Jim Nance McCord, who sent the Highway Patrol and Tennessee State Guard to Columbia. At first, the Columbia police chief would dispatch 4 patrolmen to the scene. But when shots rang out, the officers were left wounded. Following the attack on the policemen, the city government would swiftly request for state troopers, who were promptly dispatched to Mink Slide. Upon arrival, the troopers outnumbered the black patrollers. Tennessee State Safety Commissioner Lynn Bomar and his men would surround the Mink Slide district, and in the early morning hours of February 26, 1946, they would storm the area, firing randomly into buildings, cutting down phone services to Mink Slide, stealing cash, goods, seizing guns and rifles. That one night, only that one night, over 100 blacks were arrested, and nearly 300 black-owned weapons were confiscated. In no time, the county jail was overcrowded with black suspects. Painfully as it sounds, none of these individuals were granted bail or allowed legal counsel, leaving them vulnerable to the whims of justice. On February 28, 1946, Maury County deputies descended upon the prisoners, determined to uncover the truth behind the shooting of the policeman. Eventually, 28 black Colombians were indicted on attempted murder charges. Ironically, the Stevensons, whose actions, along with Fleming's, had ignited the fracas, never stood trial. 3 black men, James Johnson, William Gordon, and Napoleon Stewart, would be singled out as prime suspects. The police questioned them all day without counsel. As the interrogation intensified, Tennessee Highway Patrolmen arrived, their presence ominous. They whisked the trio away to the sheriff's office, accusing them of firing at the officers. But in a stunning reversal, Johnson and Gordon would skillfully maneuver their captors, seizing their weapons from them and unleashing a hail of bullets at the patrolmen. The response was swift and deadly. The patrolmen returned fire, killing Johnson and Gordon in the burst of gunfire. Another prisoner who was allegedly trying to escape during a transfer was injured, while Stewart miraculously escaped unscathed. Amidst the flaming chaos, a cry for help would go out. The owner of a funeral home managed to call Nashville and ask for help from the NAACP. Walter White, executive secretary of the NAACP, and Thurgood Marshall, the organization's chief legal counsel, answered. They rushed to Columbia, determined to defend the remaining prisoners against the tide of injustice. With Thurgood Marshall as the lead attorney to defend Stevenson and the other defendants, they were able to gain a change of venue, but only to another small town where trials took place throughout the summer of 1946. Marshall was assisted by 2 local attorneys, Zephaniah Alexander Luby, originally from the British West Indies, and Maurice Weaver, a white activist from Nashville. Veteran attorney Zephaniah Alexander Luby of Nashville and attorney Maxwell Weaver of Chattanooga joined the fray, bringing their expertise to the fore. The stage was set for a trial that would test the very fabric of justice. 25 Colombian blacks would face charges of shooting at white policemen in Lawrenceburg, Tennessee. The outcome hung in the balance as an all-white jury deliberated. And then, on October 4th, 1946, the verdict came. Thurgood Marshall was able to obtain acquittals for 23 of the black defendants, and only 2 out of the 25 defendants were found guilty, even with an all-white jury. But in a surprising twist, the charges were later dropped. One major reason for this was that the people of Lawrenceburg were embarrassed that the trial had been relocated from Columbia, where the main incident had happened. The Columbia race riot of 1946 was a harbinger of the turbulent 1960s, a decade marked by urban uprisings and the unyielding pursuit of equality. The embers of resistance sparked in Columbia ignited a civil rights movement that changed America forever. According to historian Dorothy Beeler,
the Columbia race riot and the reaction to it were major events of the late 1940s, which helped create a base from which Black organizations gathered strength for the civil rights push of the 1950s and 1960s.
Also, Maury County's historian Joanne McClellan doesn't call what happened a riot either. She and other historians would struggle to find an appropriate word to describe it. During a recent interview, she had said the word uprising was more fitting. McClellan said the day's events were a turning point in American history.
People lose sight of the big picture. It was not a riot. What they were doing was standing up for the right to be treated as a human being. It is about respect and treatment as a citizen of the U.S.
McClellan said. The clashes between the white store clerk and the Stevensons and Black residents and police represented a cruel juxtaposition, reflecting the reality many young Black veterans faced after returning from fighting overseas in World War II. In the decades following, the incident was largely ignored, only discussed in hushed tones around the community. According to some longtime city residents, a dark part of history rather forgotten. The return home was a battleground for social change, a second war fought by Black veterans who had only recently returned from overseas, as Gail Williams O'Brien details in his groundbreaking book, The Color of the Law, Race, Violence, and Justice in the Post-World War II South. This time, the conflict took place on their own soil, defending racial equality amid the lingering effects of slavery, ensuing aggression, and the painful history of several lynchings in Columbia. They were defending themselves, O'Brien said on History's Hook, a podcast hosted by Maury County Archives Director Tom Price. Many media outlets at the time failed to highlight state law enforcement's role in storming a Black neighborhood, where stores and property in the Bottom were destroyed. Today, amidst downtown's revitalization, the Bottom stands as a testament to time's relentless passage. Once bustling streets now wear a faded cloak of neglect, a stark contrast to the thriving development elsewhere. The echoes of prosperity and progress seem to have bypassed this storied district, leaving behind a haunting silence. That brings us to the end of yet another video segment. Did you learn a thing or two? Then reach out to us in the comment section to share thoughts. We can assure you that we learn a lot from them. Support our works always by hitting that thumb button.
All right, as always, links in the description box right below there. Man, another situation where people were disrespected and we stood up for them, and we were criminalized or made into something that we were not. And sadly to say, it's never a surprise when these things happen. Never. So sad that these things do happen and these things occur or have occurred, and they probably are still occurring. I can recall situations where there was a brother who called for help, and police showed up and shot him. And yeah, so, that's been our reality from before 1946 in Columbia, Tennessee. That's been the reality. And I'm sure if we dig more into historical points or historical information, we'll find that there are more situations and more circumstances that warrant concern. So with that, I'll yield. Go ahead, Hunt.
Khan, you would mention that we shouldn't be surprised, or we shouldn't be surprised that this happened, and you're absolutely right. This Columbia, Tennessee is probably about an hour south of Nashville, and it's about 30 minutes north of Pulaski, Tennessee. Pulaski, Tennessee, 1865 is where the Ku Klux Klan started at. So 80 years later, fast forward, we get the Columbia Massacre taking place up there, just 30 minutes north of where the Ku Klux Klan started. So you're right. It's no coincidence. Another story of injustice, of, different atrocities that have, been acted out on our people. I haven't heard anybody really address this situation. It's as if they want us to forget about all of this, all
Right.
right? But no, you do not get to commit these atrocities against our people, and we remain quiet about it and not talk about it.
Exactly.
This is being brought to the forefront. What my Ak brought out earlier in Deuteronomy. This has been our plight here in this country, and not only here in this country, throughout the world where we're scattered to.
Indeed. Yeah, it's hard times. It's hard to understand. It's hard to fathom, but it's sadly our reality, and we definitely have to deal with it. We should definitely be cognizant of it, and not just sweep it under the rug as if it's not real or it didn't happen. So, those are our people that are happened to, and those things occurred to, and yeah, so we need to be conscious of that, of those facts. But let's jump to the next video. This is the truth about Black Arabs in the media tries to hide. So if you know anything about the Arabs, this is telling you about some truth that you may or may not be privy to. So here we go.
Ever notice how the spotlight of accusations about racism always seems to be pointed at Europe and the US? They're the ones often in the hot seat, navigating reforms and discussions to tackle the issue head-on. But guess what? There's a sneaky player in this game of shadows, the Arab world. From the bustling streets of Egypt to the vibrant markets of Morocco and the oil-rich lands of Kuwait, being black in the Arab world can be a tough ride. Picture this. Slurs, sneers, and degradation could follow you to the market, dance with you at your job, or even settle in next to you at the cinema. But why aren't many people talking about it? And why is the Arab world so adept at keeping this dark chapter of human history under wraps? In this video, we're about to unravel the layers of racism woven into the fabric of the Arab world. We're shining a light on why Afro-Arabs find themselves relegated to the status of second-class citizens. But that's not all. We're also diving into the closets of history that Arabs have been desperately trying to keep locked away from the prying eyes of the world. So, grab your metaphorical flashlight, because we're about to embark on a journey through the hushed corridors of racism in the Arab world. Join us as we expose the untold stories, challenge the silence, and unravel the complex web of discrimination that Afro-Arabs face daily. It's time to confront the uncomfortable truths and uncover why the Arab world wants to sweep this chapter under the rug. Also, as a way of supporting the channel, hit the like button of the video, share, and subscribe to help the channel grow. Your support means a lot to us. Before we dive into the unsettling reality of anti-black racism in present-day Arab societies, we need to navigate the murky waters of a taboo subject, the historical connection between Arabs and black people. While one might assume it to be rooted in trade or cultural exchanges, the truth is far more traumatic. Brace yourselves for a journey through the chapters of the Arab slave trade, a dark period when Arabs traversed the unforgiving Sahara Desert, capturing black individuals to fuel the growth of their nations. The early days of the Arab slave trade, a time when the concept of human beings as commodities began to take shape. It was not just about trading goods. It was about trading lives. The Arabs, seeking to bolster their economies and expand their influence, turned their attention to the vast lands south of the Sahara. As caravans carved their way through the desert, a sinister enterprise unfolded, the capturing and enslavement of black Africans. In the heart of the Sahara, Arab slave traders ventured into communities, tearing families apart and shackling individuals who would soon become part of a dehumanizing trade network. This wasn't merely a transaction of labor, it was the brutal uprooting of lives, a disruption that would echo through generations. The early days of the Arab slave trade marked the beginning of a dark legacy that continues to cast its shadow over the present. Egypt, Morocco, Kuwait, and many other Arab countries participated as key players in a chilling trade that echoes through time. In the early days, these countries weren't just bystanders, they were right in the thick of it. Egypt, with the Nile as its ancient lifeline, became a pivotal point for enslaved individuals, marching through the Sahara towards an uncertain fate. The echoes of that time still linger along the riverbanks, a silent witness to a trade that treated people as commodities. Jumping westward, you will find that behind the scenes of Morocco. Marrakesh, with its lively souks and grand palaces, hides a history stained by the trade in black lives. Picture the market squares, once alive with vibrant colors, now holding the weight of a past that sought economic prosperity at the expense of human suffering. Slavery in Arab countries was abolished completely by 1970, with the exception of Mauritania, which did so in 1981. The end of the Arab slave trade did not signal an end to the complexities it birthed. Instead, it left an indelible mark on the collective consciousness of these nations. The scars of this history linger, shaping the dynamics of race and identity in contemporary Arab societies. The present-day manifestation of anti-black racism finds its roots in the legacy of this traumatic connection, echoing through the streets of Cairo, Marrakesh, and Kuwait City. Racism in Arab media. In the media all over Arab countries, racism is openly displayed even in the holy month. In the sacred month of Ramadan, a time when Muslims worldwide observe fasting and spiritual reflection, an unfortunate and recurring trend has marred the airwaves across the Arab world. Despite the intended promotion of family-friendly content during this period, instances of racist mockery and derogatory language against Afro-Black Arabs and Black African migrants persistently infiltrate the television screens of millions of Arab households. The year 2018 was the most outrageous, with two prominent Ramadan TV series, Azmi We Ashkan and Blok Gashmara, standing out for their offensive content. The Egyptian comedy series Azmi We Ashkan, created by the controversial producer Ahmed El Sobki, drew widespread condemnation for repeatedly featuring its lead actors donning blackface. Additionally, the series employed racist language, including the use of the N-word, and portrayed black individuals as servants who spoke broken Arabic and practiced sorcery. The implications of such content extended beyond mere entertainment, perpetuating harmful stereotypes and reinforcing discriminatory attitudes towards Afro-Black Arabs. Similarly, the Kuwaiti comedy series Blok Gashmara dedicated an entire episode to actors in blackface portraying Sudanese people as lazy and cynical. This episode fueled outrage on social media, with viewers expressing their discontent over the perpetuation of harmful stereotypes. Despite the public outcry, the film crews behind both series staunchly defended their work. Ahmed Mohi, the script writer of Azmi We Ashkan, downplayed the racial slurs, claiming that the show did not aim to insult any part of the Egyptian people. Meanwhile, Kuwaiti actor Hassan al-Balam, involved in the controversial episode of Blok Gashmara, apologized on Instagram, but asserted that the criticism against him was exaggerated. These instances of racial insensitivity and offensive content were not isolated incidents, but reflective of a pervasive issue deeply rooted in Arab popular culture and cinema. The use of blackface, racist language, and degrading portrayals of Afro-Black Arabs and Black African migrants has been a long-standing problem in the region's media. Examining the historical context reveals a troubling pattern of anti-Black racism in Arab cinema spanning decades. Examples abound, such as the 2001 Egyptian film Africano, where a lead character remarks, "Is there a power cut in there or what?" upon seeing a group of black people leaving a nightclub. Similarly, the 2005 Egyptian film Ayal Habiba, Lover Kids, features characters making derogatory remarks about a Sudanese man, played by an Arab in blackface, perpetuating harmful stereotypes and reinforcing discriminatory attitudes towards Afro-Black Arabs. Black individuals in Arab cinema are consistently cast into subordinate roles, reduced to servitude, housemaids, prostitutes, clowns, and doorkeepers working for affluent families. The derogatory depictions extend to their physical appearance, with black men and women portrayed as dirty and sluggish, subject to racist mockery, and associated with bad luck. Such representations contributed to the dehumanization of Afro-Black Arabs and Black African migrants, perpetuating harmful stereotypes that have real-world consequences. Even black children have not been spared from racial mockery in Arab cinema. The 2003 Egyptian comedy Eli Bali Balak, My Thoughts Are Your Thoughts, features a protagonist addressing his wife after mistaking a black maid's child for his own, saying, "You are white and I am white. How could we have this bar of dates as a child?" This scene reflects the deep-seated biases present in Arab cinema, where skin color is used as a basis for ridiculing and demeaning individuals. The issue is further exacerbated by the practice of Arab washing, mirroring Hollywood's notorious whitewashing, where non-black Arabs are cast in black roles. This often involves actors donning blackface, exaggerated fake features, and engaging in racial caricatures that reinforce negative stereotypes. The pervasive use of blackface in Arab cinema contrasts sharply with the trend in the United States, where the practice has largely been phased out. Remarkably, for decades, the first and only dark-skinned actor to play leading roles in Egyptian cinema was Ahmed Zaki. Even he did not escape racial characterization, being nicknamed the Bronze Star and the Black Tiger. Back in 2008, when Adel Al-Kalbani, a black Saudi imam, was appointed to lead prayers at the Grand Mosque in Mecca, you'd think it would be celebrated as a step towards inclusivity. But no, instead he faced a storm of racial insults, with some Muslims openly protesting his appointment. Imagine that, a spiritual leader facing backlash just because of the color of his skin. It's a stark reminder that racism is alive and well, even in the holiest of places. Now, the ripple effects of this kind of discrimination go beyond hurtful comments. They seep into the fabric of society, affecting young black individuals who struggle to find positive role models. Flip through the channels or scroll through mainstream media, and you'll notice a stark lack of representation for Afro-Black Arabs. This absence leaves a void, making it challenging for young people to see themselves reflected in the media landscape. The consequences are not just about feeling left out, they're about grappling with a social stigma that pushes some to disassociate themselves from their black identity. It's disheartening to see individuals deny their African heritage, engaging in intra-racial racism, striving to assimilate, and shockingly, even resorting to skin bleaching in an attempt to fit into societal norms. It's like a silent struggle happening right before our eyes, one that many might choose to overlook. But the impact goes beyond identity crises. This racism extends its claws into the lives of migrants and migrant workers, subjecting them to unthinkable hardships. Take the harrowing stories of Ethiopian women in Lebanon, subjected to abuse and exploitation, or the shocking practices of torture and slavery faced by African migrants in Libya. These are not isolated incidents. They are manifestations of a centuries-old undercurrent of entrenched racism in Arab countries. Racism in Morocco. Morocco is a country that still holds on to its slavery past and continues to deny that racism exists in the country. However, in daily life, racist terms and derogatory labels are used to refer to black Moroccans, diminishing their worth and humanity. This language, rooted in historical prejudices, reflects a lack of understanding and empathy. The animalization of black people in Morocco is not infrequent. Black individuals are sometimes compared to animals like monkeys and pigs, reducing them to dehumanizing stereotypes. This treatment is especially targeted at migrants from sub-Saharan Africa, making them feel like outsiders. They can be called Kurd, Khanzir, Akil Lahmi al-Bashar, and Hayawan. These words refer to them as monkey, pig, cannibal, and animal. They may be greeted by the sounds monkeys supposedly make, which is described as guera, guera. The heritage of black Moroccans is frequently denied and accosted with the veiled attack of the phrase Menenti, "Where are you from?" said by their fellow citizens as if true Moroccans are all white. Black Moroccans often face questions about their origins that imply they don't belong in the country. This exclusionary attitude denies their heritage and makes it harder for them to feel like valued members of society. Surprisingly, the history of slavery, the diversity of the population, and racism are not taught in schools or discussed openly. This silence perpetuates ignorance and prevents progress in addressing discrimination. Racism in Egypt. In 2018, Mohammed Azmi, the director of the Egyptian Monitoring Center on Racism, unveiled a disturbing reality about the state of racial representation in Egyptian media. The results of an extensive investigation, conducted in collaboration with co-authors, shed light on a deeply entrenched issue that permeated various forms of media, from news reports to talk shows and movies. The findings were disheartening, revealing a pervasive trend of disparagement and mockery directed at individuals with dark skin or those who spoke in the Upper Egyptian dialect. The study, which spanned the decade from 2007 to 2017, revealed a disconcerting pattern in Egyptian cinema. Nearly half of the films produced during this period were found to perpetuate stereotypes and negative portrayals of people with dark skin or those hailing from Upper Egypt. Individuals from this region were consistently relegated to stereotypical roles, often depicted as janitors or servants. This not only reinforced harmful stereotypes, but also contributed to the marginalization of a significant portion of the Egyptian population. A particularly distressing aspect of the investigation focused on the use of racist language and hate speech in media content. Approximately 1/3 of the talk shows and news reports produced between 2011 and 2016, specifically addressing topics related to Upper Egypt, were found to contain elements of racism. The prevalence of such language further exacerbated the discriminatory narrative, perpetuating harmful stereotypes and fostering a hostile environment for those targeted. Perhaps one of the most alarming revelations from the study was the stark underrepresentation of individuals with dark skin in media jobs. The report highlighted the virtual absence of diverse voices within the industry, pointing to a systemic issue that extended beyond on-screen portrayals. The dearth of opportunities for people with dark skin not only limited their visibility but also hindered their ability to influence the narrative and challenge prevailing stereotypes. Racism in Tunisia. In 2018, the Tunisian parliament took a historic step by approving a law aimed at combating racial discrimination, making Tunisia the second African country, after South Africa, and the first Arab nation to adopt such legislation. Known as Law No. 11/2018, its primary objective is to eradicate all forms of racial discrimination and their manifestations. The law underscores the importance of preserving human dignity and achieving equality among individuals in their enjoyment of rights and fulfillment of duties. By penalizing incitement to violence, hatred, discrimination, and racism, as well as the dissemination of ideas based on racial discrimination, the legislation seeks to foster a more inclusive and tolerant society. The reason for this groundbreaking law traces back to 2016 and the case of Sabrina, a black Tunisian who experienced verbal abuse on Habib Bourguiba Avenue in downtown Tunis. Shockingly, when Sabrina attempted to report the crime to the police, she was turned away due to the absence of a specific law against racism. This incident underscored a glaring gap in Tunisia's legal framework, prompting a broader societal dialogue on the need for comprehensive anti-discrimination legislation. The urgency for legal measures against racism became even more apparent on December 25, 2016, when 3 Congolese students were brutally stabbed at a train station in Tunis. This shocking act of violence prompted civil society organizations to rally for change. Prime Minister Youssef Chahed expressed his support for anti-discrimination legislation the following day, signaling a commitment to address the deep-seated issue of racism within the country. However, it's crucial to recognize that these incidents are not isolated. The documentary Tunisia's Dirty Secret by Al Jazeera sheds light on the pervasive racism that many Tunisians face in their daily lives. The film captures the experiences of individuals like Hamza, who, equipped with a hidden camera in his glasses, faced derogatory remarks from passers-by. The blatant racism manifested in slurs and insults, reflecting the harsh reality that black Tunisians and migrants contend with regularly. Notably, the documentary unveils troubling practices, such as some towns in the south of Tunisia, like Sidi Maklouf in Medellin, implementing separate school buses for black children. This segregation in education underscores the deeply rooted nature of racial discrimination, permeating even the most fundamental aspects of daily life. Such practices not only perpetuate inequality, but also contribute to the marginalization of black Tunisians from an early age. the underrepresentation of black Tunisians in the public sphere further highlights the systemic nature of racism in the country. As of 2018, there was only one black member of parliament, Jamila Debek Siksi from Enada, signaling a lack of diversity within the political landscape. Moreover, the first black newsreader on state-run TV did not appear until 2018. These instances of underrepresentation underscore the challenges faced by black Tunisians in accessing opportunities and positions of influence within the broader societal framework. In Tunisia, the absence of official recognition of race has contributed to a lack of statistical data on the black population, making it challenging to understand the extent of racial discrimination and socio-economic disparities. However, recent survey data from the Afrobarometer, conducted in April-May 2018, sheds light on the situation. Out of 1,199 respondents, approximately 8% were classified as black. These findings reveal that black Tunisians face significant socio-economic challenges compared to their counterparts. They are disproportionately located in rural areas, with a 10 percentage point difference compared to other Tunisians. Additionally, they are 15 percentage points less likely to own essential items such as radios, cars, or computers. Education also emerges as a significant factor, with black Tunisians being approximately 10% less likely to have completed primary school. The most alarming statistic is the unemployment rate, where black Tunisians are almost twice as likely to be unemployed, at 42%, than other Tunisians at 25%. This economic disparity contributes to widespread poverty among black Tunisians, limiting their access to higher education and exacerbating their exclusion from various sectors of public life. Beyond economic challenges, black Tunisians also face severe underrepresentation in politics, media, and other spheres. The consequences of this underrepresentation extend beyond mere exclusion. Many black Tunisians become targets of verbal abuse and violence due to their visibility. In southern Tunisia, the situation is particularly dire, as the black community often resides in isolated areas, such as Gosba village, compounding their marginalization. Adding to the complexity of the issue is the conflation of black Tunisians with sub-Saharan African migrants. This conflation, fueled by the invisibility of black Tunisians in public life, leads to a common assumption in Tunisian society that all black individuals in the country are of sub-Saharan origin. This misconception further hampers the recognition of black Tunisians and exacerbates their challenges. Sub-Saharan migrants themselves face distinct challenges, including racial discrimination, language barriers, documentation issues, and limited access to education and healthcare. Many of these migrants are fleeing humanitarian crises and conflicts, transiting through North Africa with the hope of continuing to Europe. However, whether they intend to transit or stay in Tunisia for study and economic reasons, they often find themselves residing in the country for extended periods. The visibility of these migrants is compounded by the overarching assumption that they are all of sub-Saharan origin. Tragically, racial discrimination in Tunisia has resulted in violent incidents, as exemplified by the death of prominent anti-racism campaigner Falikou Coulibaly in December 2018. Coulibaly, the president of the Association of Ivorians in Tunisia, AIT, was stabbed to death in Tunis. While authorities attributed the killing to a theft, Coulibaly's death sparked demonstrations by hundreds of black Tunisians protesting against racist discrimination in the country and the perceived lack of a robust government response. In an effort to address the pervasive racial discrimination, the minority rights group, MRG, has documented hundreds of cases against black Tunisians and sub-Saharan migrants in 2019 and 2020 through its anti-discrimination points network. The plight of these communities has garnered international attention, and a demonstration in solidarity with the Black Lives Matter movement was organized by Menemti and other groups in Tunisia in June 2020, marking the first of its kind in the region. The kafala system. The kafala system, prevalent in Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, Kuwait, Oman, Qatar, United Arab Emirates, as well as Jordan and Lebanon Arab countries, is a sponsorship system that ties a migrant worker's legal status to their employer. This system has been widely criticized for fostering conditions that leave individuals vulnerable to exploitation and abuse. It is a system that promotes racism and has been termed modern slavery. The case of a black migrant worker highlights the challenges faced by many in attempting to change employers despite enduring exploitative conditions. Under the kafala system, a migrant worker's legal residency and work status are entirely dependent on their sponsoring employer. This creates an imbalanced power dynamic, as the employer holds significant control over the worker's ability to stay in the country and work. The inherent flaw in this system is that it grants employers unchecked authority, often leading to situations of abuse and exploitation. Black migrants, in particular, often find themselves disproportionately affected by the kafala system. The system, when combined with racial biases, can result in the de facto relegation of black migrant workers to a position akin to modern-day slavery. The vulnerabilities of black migrants are exacerbated by discriminatory attitudes prevalent in certain societies, perpetuating racial stereotypes and unequal treatment. One key issue is the difficulty faced by migrant workers, including black individuals, in changing employers. This restriction severely limits the worker's ability to escape abusive or exploitative conditions. Employers can wield this power to maintain control over their employees, knowing that the threat of losing their job also means jeopardizing their legal status in the country. The exploitation of black migrant workers under the kafala system manifests in various forms, including long working hours, inadequate living conditions, and meager wages. Reports of physical and verbal abuse are not uncommon, and the fear of reprisals often prevents victims from seeking help or reporting such incidents. The kafala system not only perpetuates modern-day slavery, but also contributes to the promotion of racism within the host countries. The power dynamics established by the system can be manipulated to reinforce existing racial hierarchies, with black migrant workers facing systemic discrimination and limited access to legal recourse. Human rights organizations and activists have been vocal in their condemnation of the kafala system. Calls for comprehensive legal reforms aim to address the root causes of exploitation and discrimination embedded in this sponsorship system. The introduction of an anti-racism law in Tunisia serves as an example that legislative measures can play a crucial role in addressing systemic issues. While legislation alone is not a panacea, it can set the tone for societal change and encourage conversations around racial equality. Other Arab nations could consider similar legal measures to demonstrate a commitment to eradicating racism and fostering inclusivity. In the Gulf, where economic prosperity has led to a multicultural influx of people, promoting diversity and combating racism is vital for sustainable development. Recognizing and valuing the contributions of individuals from diverse backgrounds can enhance social harmony and contribute to the overall well-being of these societies. Efforts to tackle racism should extend beyond legal frameworks to encompass educational initiatives and awareness campaigns. Promoting cultural understanding and celebrating diversity can help break down stereotypes and prejudices that contribute to discriminatory practices. In schools, workplaces, and communities, fostering an environment of inclusivity and respect can contribute to dismantling deeply ingrained biases. Moreover, media plays a significant role in shaping perceptions and attitudes. Encouraging responsible and inclusive representation in media can challenge stereotypes and contribute to a more nuanced understanding of different racial and ethnic groups. By portraying diverse narratives, media can become a powerful tool for fostering empathy and breaking down barriers. While it's true that some Arab countries may not exhibit racism in the same overt manner as seen in certain European or Latin American nations, it does not absolve them of the responsibility to address and rectify existing issues. Recognizing the problem is the first step, and a collective effort involving government initiatives, civil society, and individuals is necessary to bring about meaningful change. This brings us to the end of this video. Tell us what you think in the comment section, as we are always interested in your thoughts. As always, don't forget.
All right. Surprisingly, that video was different than what I thought it would be. I was pretty much expecting them to talk about the Arab slave trade, but they were talking about more modern situations that occur in these Arab countries. And I was very surprised to hear about Egypt. Well, I shouldn't say very surprised, but I was surprised. It's been the consensus that they moved the Egyptians out and moved them to Sudan. And it was ironic that the Egyptians, that the people in Egypt now are talking negatively about the Sudanese people and saying bad stuff about them, because those are the actual, as my understanding is, those are the actual Arabs, not Arabs, those are the actual Egyptians, Mizrahites, that are in Sudan. So that's very unusual to say the least. So, but yeah, I'll rest there on that video. Go ahead,
Khan, if we look at the area of Saudi Arabia, the area of Mizraim, Libya, Morocco, Mauritania, North Africa, right?
Mm-hmm.
This was all inhabited by melanated people.
Right.
So you and I read 2 years ago, and I remember when we came across it in Bereshit, how it mentioned Arabs before Ishmael.
Mm-hmm.
There were Arab people in that area before Ishmael was even born. These were all melanated people. The people who inhabit the area now, even the king of Saudi Arabia, and his blood is blood from Turkey.
Mm-hmm.
Like, these lighter skinned people who are called Arabs are actually from the Turkish Nordic tribes. There's a channel on YouTube, and what is the sister's channel? It is Mount Meru Arts, Music, and History. And that's that channel. I think you're friends with her also on Facebook. Dana Ritchie.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, Dana Reynolds Marnici. And what she does, she highlights historical evidence of what the true Arabs look like. And these were all what we would call so-called black people. I'm not going to say Negro, because all of them don't look Negro. Like, you can tell some of them are Hamitic, but or more Hamitic in origin. But these are melanated people, man, and it's really ironic that things are actually reversed now, but that's what we're experiencing all across the globe.
Yeah, and it's amazing how it's against black people. Like, it's everybody hates so-called black people, no matter where. Seems like no matter where you are, unless you on a continent, and some places on the continent, it still exists, and it's insane. It's really insane. It's really crazy. The original people of the earth, that was the ones who I hated, and that's doesn't make any sense. But it is what it is, I guess. And let's go jump to the last video. Well, the next video, I should say. This is what Arabs are doing to blacks will make you cry. What Arabs do to blacks will make you cry, and this is still happening. So I'm hoping this is more similar to what we just watched. I'm hoping this was a little bit different. So again, from Black Journals, and again, all links are in the description box. So feel free to check out their channel and find more information about them and the video. So here we go.
Over the years, global focus and discourse on slavery has concentrated on the transatlantic trade that featured American and European merchants. The British, Portuguese, Dutch, French, Spaniards, and Danes of Denmark were involved in the oceanic trade in African men, women, and children, which lasted from the mid-16th century until the 1860s. At this time, more than 15 million Africans were enslaved and transported to the Americas. Only 10 to 12 million would make it through the sea to face a life of harsh labor, discrimination, and abuse. While the transatlantic slave trade is well known, taught in school, another form of slavery that was just as devastating has been kept secret. This other trade remains largely ignored, and at times has even been treated as a taboo subject, despite being a key component of African history owing to the devastating impact it has had on the continent, its generations, and its people's way of life. In this video, we are going to talk about the Arab-Muslim slave trade. We will take a look at the trans-Saharan slave trade in particular, where Arabs would raid, capture, and enslave even fellow Arabs and Muslims just because they had black skin. How Arabs justified these deeds using verses from their holy scripture, and how the slave trade still exists today. Before we get right into the video, please smash the like button and subscribe to the channel to keep informed of our eye-opening black narrative. The Arab-Muslim slave trade, also known as the Trans-Saharan trade or Eastern slave trade, is noted as the longest slave trade, having occurred for more than 1,300 years, while taking millions of Africans away from their continent to work in foreign lands in the most inhumane conditions. Scholars have christened it a veiled genocide, attributing the tagline to the most humiliating and near-death experience slaves were subjected to, from capture in slave markets to labor fields abroad and the harrowing journey in between. While official figures on the exact number of slaves captured from Africa in the Trans-Sahara trade are contested, most scholars put the estimate at about 9 million. Records of slave trading and transportation in the Sahara date back as far as the 3rd millennium BC during the reign of the Egyptian king Sneferu, who crossed the 4th cataract of the Nile into what is today modern Sudan, to capture slaves and send them north. These raids for prisoners of war, who subsequently became slaves, were a regular occurrence in the ancient Nile Valley and Africa. During times of conquest and after winning battles, the ancient Nubians were taken as slaves by the ancient Egyptians. The Garamantes, an ancient civilization based primarily in the southern region of Libya, relied heavily on slave labor from sub-Saharan Africa. They used slaves in their own communities to construct and maintain underground irrigation systems known to Berbers as fogara. Ancient Greek historian Herodotus recorded in the 5th century BC that the Garamantes enslaved cave-dwelling Ethiopians, known as troglodytes, chasing them with chariots. In the early Roman Empire, the city of Lepsis established a slave market to buy and sell slaves from the Bantu African interior. In the 5th century AD, Roman Carthage was trading in black slaves brought across the Sahara. The empire imposed customs tax on the trade of slaves. Black slaves seem to have been valued as household slaves for their exotic appearance. Some historians argue that the scale of slave trade in this period may have been higher than medieval times due to the high demand for slaves in the Roman Empire. However, the slave trade through the Sahara in antiquity may have been small and rare, as Saharan trade didn't reach large dimensions until the Arabs and Berbers introduced large numbers of camels into the desert. The Trans-Saharan slave trade, established in antiquity, continued during the Middle Ages. Following the early 8th century conquest of North Africa, Arabs, Berbers, and other ethnic groups ventured into sub-Saharan Africa first, along the Nile Valley towards Nubia, and also across the Sahara towards West Africa. They were interested in the Trans-Saharan trade, especially in slaves, as there was a constant demand for slaves in the Eastern Arab nations and Constantinople. The Muslim slave traders distinguished themselves from the peoples on the other side of the Sahara, referring to these African populations as Zanj or Sudan, meaning black. Arabs would routinely acquire slaves through violent raiding, followed by capturing them and sending them on dangerous forced marches across the Sahara to slave markets where they would be treated as chattel, which is personal property that can be bought and sold. In North Africa, the main slave markets were in Morocco, Algiers, Tripoli, and Cairo. Sales were held in public places such as souks. Aside from raiding, slaves could also be obtained by purchasing them from local black rulers. In addition, some would steal the children of the Zanj, luring them with dates and lead them from place to place, until they seize them, take them farther in the country, and transport them to their own countries. In 1353, the Berber explorer Ibn Battuta would record accompanying a trade caravan to Morocco, which carried 600 black female slaves who were to be used as domestic servants and concubines. When Battuta visited the ancient African kingdom of Mali, he recounted that the local inhabitants vied with each other in the number of slaves and servants they had, and was himself given a slave boy as a hospitality gift. The routes taken by slave caravans transporting slaves depended on their destination. Slaves headed to Egypt would be carried by boat down the Nile, and slaves headed to Arabia would be sent to ports on the Red Sea such as Suakin and Asab. Slaves headed to North Africa would have to take the Saharan trade routes, which had been in use since around 1000 BC. These include routes connecting modern-day Libya to Nigeria, the Tripoli-Fezzan-Bornu route, connecting Libya to areas of what are today Chad, Niger, and Cameroon, and the east-west route connecting Egypt to Ghana, Mali, and Songhai. Kanem-Bornu Zawila was another route to North Africa, as the Kanem-Bornu Empire in the eastern part of Niger was an active part of the trans-Saharan slave trade for centuries, and the trade formed the basis of the empire's prosperity. Passage through the Sahara required the expertise of ethnic groups whose lifestyles were uniquely adapted for survival in scorching, arid environments, namely the local Berber tribes and the foreign Bedouins from Arabia. For example, the Tuareg and others who are indigenous to Libya facilitated, taxed, and partly organized the trade from the south along the trans-Saharan trade routes. Various nomadic peoples played critical roles as guards, guides, and camel drivers. As a result, they were granted autonomy and treated as allies by governments of North Africa. Oases were vital way stations for caravans, and those such as Aujala, Gadames, and Kufra in Libya allowed both north-south and east-west travel. Even with expert help, the passage could still prove deadly to merchants and slaves. Sometimes whole caravans of thousands of people could disappear without a trace. Between AD 650 and 1600, an average of 5,000 Africans were shipped out by the Arabs. This makes a rough total of 7.25 million. Then, between 1600 and 1800, another 1.4 million Africans were shipped out by the Arabs. The 19th century represented the highest point of the Arabian trade, where 12,000 Africans were shipped out every year. The total figure for the 19th century alone was 1.2 million slaves to Arabia. Thus, in terms of numbers, Arabia's 9.85 million is not far behind the conservative estimate of nearly 12 million African victims of the Atlantic slave trade. Some African historians, though, reject these figures on the grounds that they are too low. They suggest over 50 million Africans were shipped out during the Atlantic trade alone. According to some researchers, another 4.1 million Africans were shipped across the Red Sea to the Persian Gulf and India. This trade also, with the notable exception of some Portuguese involvement in the area of Mozambique, and of 18th and 19th century French exports to islands under their control in the Indian Ocean, was largely conducted by Muslims. Throughout the 19th century, the Omani Arab rulers of Zanzibar shipped hundreds of thousands of African slaves to work on clove plantations on the island. It was this trade that gave Europe and America so much satisfaction, after abolishing their own trade in African slaves, to highlight the wickedness of the Arab slavers, who continued to enslave Africans well into the first decades of the 20th century. Even to this day, Arab slavers are still at work in Sudan and Mauritania, buying and selling black Africans. Like the Atlantic trade, the Arabian trade's Middle Passage was equally as horrible and terrifying. The Middle Passage describes the harrowing journey lasting several months from Africa's west coast to the Americas, during which millions of Africans, packed like sardines in the slave ships, died of thirst, hunger, rough seas, and sometimes from the sheer brutality inflicted by the European slavers. In the Arabian trade, the trudge across the Sahara in leg and neck chains, and necks in large forked sticks and hands tied with bark thongs, was particularly harsh on the African slaves. The hardships of these long marches across the desert were considerable, and much later travelers reported that the routes were lined with the parched skeletons of those who succumbed to exhaustion and thirst along the way. The Arab slavers did not only march their African captives to Arabia, they also sometimes sold them to European slavers. Enterprising Arab merchants and middlemen would gather in Zanzibar for raw materials, including cloves and ivory. They would then buy black slaves who they would use to carry the raw materials and also work in their plantations abroad. Slaves from as far as Sudan, Ethiopia, and Somalia would be availed at the Zanzibar market and shipped through the Indian Ocean to the Persian Gulf or Arabic Peninsula, where they worked in Oman, Iran, Saudi Arabia, and Iraq. African Muslims were, however, never captured as slaves due to the Islamic legal views, but this changed very quickly. On the other hand, The trans-Saharan caravan concentrated on the West African region, straddling the Niger Valley to the Gulf of Guinea, along the trans-Saharan roads to slave markets in Maghreb and the Nile Basin. The voyage, that could take up to 3 months, involved inhumane conditions that saw slaves die along the way due to diseases, hunger, and thirst. An estimated 50% of all slaves in this trade would die in transit. Other 19th century European explorers recorded their perilous experiences traveling through the Saharan desert alongside slave caravans. The explorer Gustav Nachtigall reported finding numerous bones at desert springs that had run dry. Nachtigall estimated that for every one slave that successfully arrived at the market, 3 or 4 had either died or escaped. Cold could also kill in the desert, as the explorer Heinrich Barth relayed a story that the Vizier of Bornu had lost 40 slaves in a single night in Libya. A British account described 100 skeletons. In modern times, the popular image of African slavery springs from the vision of a tormented male suffering under the lash of unceasing labor on some New World sugar plantation. Yet the real face of servitude finds its focus in the forced migration of millions of girls and young women across the Sahara and the Horn of Africa into the institutions of Islamic concubinage. While in the European New World, the measure of a man's stature was mapped out and calibrated on the physical dimensions of empire, built upon the sinews of forced masculine labor. In the Islamic Orient, wealth, however, it was a reflection of prestige, young girls, the vessel of male hubris. Thus, women slaves in the Arab world were often turned into concubines living in harems, and rarely as wives, their children becoming free. A large number of male slaves and young boys were castrated and turned into eunuchs who kept watch over the harems. Castration was a particularly brutal operation with a survival rate of only 10%. These eunuchs, who were around 7 times more expensive than non-castrated males, could also be used as administrators, tutor, secretaries, commercial agents, and even concubines. Due to strictures within Islamic law, slaves would not usually be castrated within Muslim territory and, therefore, would be castrated before being sent across the Sahara. Sometimes slaves were castrated after purchase in North African slave markets. While the Europeans paid a higher price for male slaves than females, the reverse was the case with the Arabs. Moreover, while the European slavers profited mainly from male labor, the Arabs saw profit in sexual satisfaction and reproductive potential. Slavery unquestionably checked population growth in Africa, and consequentially placed tremendous pressure upon gender and marital relationships during the Arab slave. In this sense, the feminine-oriented Arab slave trade, though neither motivated nor executed with economic benefits as prime objective, caused far greater demographic damage and consequently greater economic decline with its excessive poaching of the reproductive potential of the harvested areas. The Arabs raided sub-Saharan Africa for 13 centuries without interruption. Most of the millions of men they deported disappeared as a result of inhumane treatment. This painful page in the history of black people has apparently not been completely turned. In the Muslim culture of the Middle Ages, blackness became increasingly identified with slavery. This was justified by appeals to a specific interpretation of the biblical story of Curse of Ham, that posited Ham had been cursed by Noah in 2 ways. The first, the turning of his skin black, and the second, that his descendants would be doomed to slavery. Muslim slave traders would use this as a pretext to enslave blacks, including black Muslims. In the late 14th century, a black king of Bornu wrote a letter to the Sultan of Egypt complaining of the continual slave raids perpetrated by Arab tribesmen, which were devastating his lands and resulting in the mass enslavement of the black Muslim population of the region. In Al-Andalus, the area of medieval Iberia under Islamic control, black Muslims could be legally held as slaves. This all occurred despite the orthodox Muslim jurist position that no Muslim, regardless of race, could be enslaved. Even as late as the 19th century, many of the common people in Islamic society still believed that enslavement based on skin color, rather than based on religion, was approved by the religious laws of Islam. In Central Africa during the 16th and 17th centuries, slave traders continued to raid the region as part of the expansion of the Saharan and Nile River slave routes. Captives were enslaved and shipped to the Mediterranean coast, Europe, Arabia, the Western Hemisphere, or to the slave ports and factories along the West and North Africa coasts, or south, along the Ubangi and Congo rivers. Even though the slave trade was officially abolished in Tripoli in 1853, in practice, it continued until the 1890s. And even as Europe, one of the key players in the African slave trade, abolished the practice hundreds of years ago, and the United States officially ended it in 1865. Arab countries continued the trade, with majority ending it late in the 20th century. In Malawi, slavery was officially criminalized in 2007, with mentions of some Arab countries currently being involved, albeit clandestinely. By 1858, the British consul in Tripoli had recorded that more than 66% of the value shipped across the Sahara was made up by slaves. The British consul in Benghazi wrote in 1875 that the slave trade had reached an enormous scale and that the slaves who were sold in Alexandria and Constantinople had quadrupled in price. This trade, he wrote, was encouraged by the local government. By the mid-19th century, it's possible that nearly 10,000 slaves were being transported to North Africa yearly. After the establishment of the British and Foreign Anti-Slavery Society in 1839 to fight slave trading in the Mediterranean, Ahmad I ibn Mustafa, Bey of Tunis, agreed to outlaw exporting, importing, and selling slaves in 1842, and he made slavery illegal in 1846. In 1848, France outlawed slavery in Algeria. Slavery was not abolished in Mauritania until 1981. Since the beginning of the Libyan civil war of 2011, that saw the overthrow of Muammar Gaddafi's regime by NATO-backed anti-Gaddafi forces, Libya has been plagued by instability, and migrants with little cash and no papers have become vulnerable. Libya is a major exit point for African migrants heading to Europe. The International Organization for Migration, or IOM, published a report in April 2017 showing that many of the migrants from West Africa heading to Europe are sold as slaves after being detained by people smugglers or militia groups. African countries south of Libya were targeted for slave trading and transferred to Libyan slave markets instead. According to the victims, the price is higher for migrants with skills like painting and tiling. Slaves are often ransomed to their families, and in the meantime, until the ransom is paid, they can be tortured, forced to work, sometimes to death, and eventually executed or left to starve if they can't pay for too long. Women are often raped and used as sex slaves and sold to brothels and private Libyan clients. Many child migrants also suffer from abuse and child rape in Libya. After receiving unverified CNN video of a November 2017 slave auction in Libya, a human trafficker told Al Jazeera that hundreds of migrants are bought and sold across the country every week. There were other confirmed reports of slavery in Libya by Arabs in the 21st century. A Libyan group known as the Asma Boys have antagonized migrants from other parts of Africa from at least as early as 2000, destroying their property. Nigerian migrants in January 2018 gave accounts of abuses in detention centers, including being leased or sold as slaves. Videos of Sudanese migrants being burnt and whipped for ransom were released later on by their families on social media. In June 2018, the United Nations applied sanctions against 4 Libyans, including a Coast Guard commander and 2 Eritreans, for their criminal leadership of slave trade networks. Even as the rest of the world realized the harm slavery did to an entire continent and made a declaration to abolish it, the Arabs protested it, and it took a lot of international trade and revolt by the slaves for them to end it. Most of the African authors have not yet published a book on the Arab-Muslim slave trade out of religious solidarity. There are 500 million Muslims in Africa, and it is better to blame the West than talk about the past crimes of Arab Muslims. Looking back at history, you can tell of the horrors of the Arab slave trade, the millions that died on the journey through the desert, and the torture that waited for them once they reached their destination. What's surprising is that not many people talk about this part of history. It's like a secret that's not shared. But we need to know about it because it still affects people today. Shockingly, the echoes of this cruel past continue to reverberate in modern times. In some Arab countries in Africa, the legacy of slavery persists, with migrants looking for a better life being greeted with bondage and been shipped off to the highest bidder. We all need to work together to change this. We should learn about this hidden past and talk openly about it. By doing that, we can start to make things better. We have to teach others, be aware, and speak up so that no one is treated like a slave anymore. We must remember the people who suffered because of the Arab-Muslim slave trade. They were strong and didn't give up, even in tough times. By understanding this history and promising to end slavery everywhere, we show that we care about fairness, equality, and making the world a kinder place for everyone. As always, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to our channel, and share our videos to let more people know the truth about blacks.
All right, so yeah, they talk more on that one about the Arab slave trade, which is what I thought their first video was going to be more about. You know, as I understand it, and I don't have any source to really define this, but as I understand it, they're still trading people today in that region of the world. That's been what I understood. So Arabs can be difficult, and if you've ever got into a conversation with them, you'll see that they're very, very, very racist, and they make no bones about it. They don't care for black people at all, and I don't know if that includes black Muslims, but oftentimes it's just I think it's whatever they can get out of you. You know, if they can get something from you, then they're with it. But if not, then it is what it is. So, but yeah, I'll rest there. Go ahead, Doc.
You know, just real quick, we read in, different places in the scriptures of our people being scattered. The Arab slave trade or sub-Saharan slave trade was a vehicle, a form, by the Most High of making his word not come back void. He said that was going to happen, and that's what happened. A lot of times we are too familiar with the transatlantic slave trade and the system of slavery that here, but there was a much harsher slave. Well, I'm not even gonna say much harsher. I would say that it was different. We go over to look at that part of the world now, and you don't see a lot of faces like mine. And we know that they were taken, but the Arabs had, these people had a norm of castrating the males, so the males weren't reproducing. So that's why I would say that it would be more harsh than the slavery here. You've got a whole population of our people just written off because the males weren't reproducing, but the females were reproducing the seed of the captors. Yeah. So I'm sorry, you had something out?
No, I was agreeing. Yeah, kind.
Yeah. So it's just another atrocity, acted out on our people.
Yeah, sadly. You think about that, the fact that they would castrate the males. So that means they would rather just get new people rather than, I don't like calling people slaves, but get new people rather than bring them to, let them reproduce. And that's crazy. That's economically unsound. But
fear,
yeah, it really worked in their benefit because it took away, what you have here. What you have here, you started with, I don't know the exact numbers, but a low number of people who were brought here captive, and then now you have millions probably 20 to 40 million so-called black people in this country, and they don't have that. So that's something else. That's something else. So I had another video, but rather for the sake of time, we're gonna go ahead and forego that video. It is in the description box, and the name of it is 5 countries where Black people can get free permanent residence on day one. So check it out. It's from Discovery Top 10 or Discover Top 10, and again, it's to show various places where you can go and get citizenship for whatever means you see fit. And yeah, it was supposed to be a bit of an uplifting video but for the sake of time, we're gonna go ahead and close this video review down and get to our devotion as well as our scripture reading. So anything else, Art?
Allah, all praises to the Most High for his chastisement to make us better. Right?
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Always praises to the Abba for all things, even things that we don't necessarily enjoy, that we don't think the best of, but it's for our benefit at the end of the day. So I'm going to close out. First of all, the reason that we do this is for Israel. Romans chapter 10 and 1, brethren, my heart's desire and prayer to Ha'abba the Father for Israel is that they might be saved. And how do we get to that? How do we get to that? By Ecclesiastes chapter number 12 and verse number 13. Let us hear the conclusion of the whole matter. Fear the Most High and keep his commandments, for this is the whole duty of man. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that keeping the commandments alone is going to get you to the promised land. We also have to keep the belief, the faith in the Mashiach, the Messiah. So keep that in mind as well. But in keeping the belief in the Messiah, you're going to keep these commandments as well. So let us hear the conclusion of the whole matter. Fear the Most High and keep his commandments, for this is the whole duty of man. At the end of the day, when it is all said and done, all the dust is settled and all the smoke is cleared, we will be judged on whether we have feared the Most High and kept his commandments, for this is the whole duty of man. I am your Akazaki Yahu, joined by my most esteemed Kenaniah, giving all praises, honor, and great esteem unto the Most High Power, Yahuwah Bahashem, Yahushua HaMashiach, and to the 12 tribes of Israel, who were scattered to the 4 quarters of the earth. I say shalom, wa baruki, that is peace and blessings. And I cannot wait to the day that the Most High brings us back together, and we are once again 12 tribes, one family, one nation, under the Most High Power, under one covenant, back in our own land with a heart of flesh and no more a heart of stone, with our enemies, our adversaries, and all those who hate us under our feet. Until that day come, Shabbat Shalom, family.
Shabbat Shalom, Mr. Pekah.
All praises to the Abba. Praise you, Abba Yah. Barak Hashem, Yahuwah.